The mighty wizard Thornhilda McGaskell needs to renew the license on her flying carpet. She reports to the bureaucracy of flying carpet departments and finds herself before a window. Hello, I'm Thornhilda. I'm here to renew my carpet's license. Oh, yeah. The system says that last year you had some worn-out tassels, Thornhilda. Yeah, so I'm going to need you to present a JITW form in order to renew your flying carpet license. Just pop along to window 1015 and they'll help you out. So Thornhilda tromps along to window 1015. Hi, my name is Thornhilda and I need to renew my carpet's license. I need a JITW form in order to prove that my tassels have been properly repaired. Yeah, sorry about that, but we can only help you on, Tuesdays? So you're going to have to go to window 9 in order to get a JITW today. It is Tuesday? Not in Australia, it's not. Off you pop. Window 9. Hi, my name is Thornhilda, and I need a new license for my carpet, and I need a JITW form so that I can prove that the tassels have been properly repaired. Oh, honey, we only help with those on Saturdays. You need to go to window 2015. They'll help you on Tuesdays. Go on back now. I am so over you people. Fireball! Ma'am, setting fire to the counter won't expedite your application. And mind the paperwork with the sulfur. It's hell to redo all this. And you don't want that to fall on you. Now, do you? Welcome back to Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. Today, we continue the series of fantasy politics by plunging into bureaucracy. So if you can just fill in your JITW form, we can get this show on the road. Bureaucracy often gets a bad rap associated with red tape and slow processes, but it's actually the backbone of governance, both ancient and modern, and it's pretty crucial for any functioning government, whether it's grounded in reality or fantasy. At its core, bureaucracy involves structured organizations composed of officials and departments that carry out the operations of government. Their job is to collect data so that government can make efficient decisions and laws, enforce those laws, collect taxes, and ensure the delivery of public services, from education and healthcare to infrastructure maintenance and public safety. Bureaucracies manage daily administrative tasks that underpin the lives of citizens, issuing licenses, maintaining public records, and overseeing public lands. They regulate various activities within their jurisdiction to ensure compliance with laws and protect public interests, covering sectors like the environment, financial markets, and workplace safety. Or, back in ancient times, who's allowed to lead a trade caravan, and where can you put your farm? Through these roles, bureaucracies strive to deliver governmental service equitably and efficiently, leveraging the expertise of career professionals who provide continuity amidst changing political landscapes. At least, that's the theory. We'll talk about why and how things get weird a little later on. But today, we're delving into bureaucracies not just as they work in governments where there's just humans and no fantasy, but also how they work when you add magical creatures, sorcerers, and all of the layers of complexity and intrigue that you need for a political fantasy. But before we add that magic and those creatures, let's make sure we understand the role bureaucracy played in our world by exploring our history and examining the bureaucracies of Byzantium and Imperial China. What elements really describe a bureaucracy? Or, to put it another way, what does a bureaucracy in your world need in order to be a proper, functioning organ of state? I did a fair amount of research into Byzantium during the Eastern Roman Empire period and into Imperial China from the Han Dynasty onward, and distilled the following key components of a bureaucracy. 1. Centralized authority. In a bureaucracy, centralized authority helps maintain control over large areas, ensuring that the central government's directives are implemented uniformly across all regions. The Byzantine bureaucracy was characterized by a strong centralized authority with the emperor at the apex. This centralized control was crucial for managing a vast empire and ensuring the uniform application of policies and laws. Similarly, in Imperial China, especially during the Han Dynasty onwards, the emperor held supreme bureaucratic authority. The centralized system allowed for effective governance across diverse and expansive territories with multiple different ethnicities. 2. Complex hierarchy. A complex hierarchy distributes responsibilities across different departments or levels, which helps in specialized management and prevents any single entity from becoming overloaded with diverse tasks. The bureaucracy in Byzantium was divided into distinct branches, each with specific roles such as military administration, fiscal management, and judicial affairs. This division ensured specialized handling of different government functions. The Chinese bureaucracy also featured a well-defined hierarchy, structured into various levels, from the central government down to the local administrations, each responsible for different aspects of governance. 3. A professional and ethical bureaucracy. A professional bureaucracy ensures that government functions are carried out by knowledgeable and skilled individuals, which enhances efficiency and decision-making quality. Byzantine bureaucrats were often well educated in law, philosophy, and administration, which was essential for the effective management of state affairs. The civil service examination system from China emphasized Confucian teachings, creating a class of scholar officials who were trained and educated to manage public affairs. I should note here that in China, Confucian teachings was emphasized, and in Byzantium, it was the Orthodox Church that filled this kind of code-driven behavior. I noted with interest that in both China and Byzantium, there was a strong link to ethical frameworks, in Byzantium's case driven by religion, and in China's case driven by the teachings of Confucian philosophers. So long story short, it's not just professional bureaucrats, it's also ethical bureaucrats that are important. And for that, having a code that people adhere to is great. It's almost like a code of chivalry, but for clerks. And onward to 4, meritocracy. Meritocracy aims to reduce corruption and increase efficiency by ensuring that positions are filled based on ability and competence rather than nepotism and patronage. While Byzantine bureaucracy incorporated elements of meritocracy, it also relied heavily on familial connections and patronage. However, positions such as judicial appointments often required demonstrated competence. In addition, Byzantine bureaucracy made heavy use of eunuchs who couldn't perpetuate their family line and as such was seen to be more loyal. In fact, one of the Constantines said, "Eunuchs swarm around the court like flies around a cowshed." But eunuchs were critical to the functioning of the bureaucracy because they were considered a separate gender, so they could also interact freely with both men and women despite the strict gender-based hierarchy that existed at the time. China also leaned heavily into a meritocracy. They developed a rigorous system through the civil service exams that assessed candidates on their knowledge and administrative abilities. Indeed, the civil service exams were a way in which Chinese people could achieve social mobility by passing the exams and joining the imperial bureaucracy. So you can make this meritocratic system not only be good for your bureaucracy, but also be good for the social mobility of your culture. And finally, let's talk about 5, legal framework. A robust legal framework standardizes administrative procedures and provides a constant basis for resolving disputes, ensuring fairness and stability in governance. The legal framework in Byzantium, including the Justinian Code, was a cornerstone of bureaucratic operations, guiding everything from administrative procedures to legal disputes. Similarly, the Chinese bureaucracy was deeply influenced by Confucian ethics and codified laws, which provided a stable structure for governance and conflict resolution. These elements show how historical bureaucracies manage complex and vast empires efficiently. By understanding these foundational aspects, we can better appreciate how to build or critique bureaucratic systems in our own fantasy worlds. Now that we understand what bureaucracies are supposed to achieve, let's discuss why, despite their critical roles, bureaucracies often get a bad rap for red tape and inefficiency, and how they can sometimes slow down rather than facilitate governance. Red tape often has a bad reputation, conjuring images of endless forms, queues, and frustratingly slow processes, as per my skit in the start. But why does it exist, and is it all bad? First, let's discuss the good part. Typically, red tape refers to the complex rules and formalities that make up bureaucratic procedures. These systems are designed to standardize how decisions are made and actions are taken in order to ensure that everyone, from the emperor to the common citizen, follows the same set of rules. This structure helps coordinate across various departments and regions, and also, when it works properly, prevents corruption and bias. By requiring that all actions be recorded and subjected to the same procedural standards, it reduces the chances for individual discretion, which can lead to corrupt practices. However, red tape has several dark sides. 1. Bureaucracies are notoriously resistant to change. This resistance stems partly from their very structure, designed for stability and predictability. Changes in procedures or policies can disrupt the routine, requiring retraining and adjustments that many may find cumbersome and unnecessary. Moreover, those who benefit from the current system are often the least inclined to see change, leading to a self-perpetuating status quo that can be difficult to reform. You need bureaucracy to reform bureaucracy, which can be challenge rating super hard. It is, however, a very interesting plot idea for a story. 2. There is the impartiality paradox. One of the fundamental strengths of bureaucracy is its theoretical impartiality. Everyone is supposed to be treated the same regardless of status, wealth, or connections. However, this can also be a drawback. When bureaucratic procedures are too rigid, they can fail to account for individual circumstances, forcing square pegs into round holes. This one-size-fits-all approach can lead to injustices or absurdities, particularly in complex or unusual situations where a more nuanced approach would be beneficial. Red tape is not set up to deal with outliers, and so people who are outliers suffer. Dark side number 3. Red tape is ever increasing. Bureaucracies have a tendency to grow, not shrink. What might start as a simple form to address a specific issue can, over years, morph into a multi-page document filled with checkboxes for scenarios most people have never heard of. For example, a chariot breaks a wheel during a chariot race and the horses get into the crowd, unaliving 5 spectators. This is bad, and because of this, a form is created that the clerk of the racecourse has a list of things to check before the race, like the strength of the barricades. 5 years later, that same clerk is signing off on the moisture content of the soil on the track, the dietary logs of the horses for the past month, the mental health assessment of the charioteers, the wheel integrity reports verified by 3 independent wheelwrights, and a spectator safety briefing that must be acknowledged through signed waivers in stone tablets in triplicate by all attendees. The form that began as a simple checklist has ballooned into a bureaucratic behemoth that requires multiple clerks and inspectors to manage, taking several days to process. Each new incident, no matter how minor, adds another layer of complexity to the paperwork as officials attempt to legislate for every conceivable contingency. This phenomena can lead to bloated administrations, where the process becomes more important than the outcome. An example from fantasy might be a simple travel permit that, over the centuries, evolves to require proof of no outstanding library fines, a sign-off by no fewer than 3 local majors, and a sworn statement to not engage in necromancy. This kind of complexity can also result in corruption, where the red tape bloat has become so bad that the only way through it is to know a guy, which quickly becomes pay a guy in order to have that guy navigate the bureaucracy for you. And that leads to the steady decline of trust in bureaucracy to the point where the fabric of your society erodes. And if you think I'm being overly dramatic, I have seen this happen in South Africa. The bureaucracy is so slow and so cumbersome that there's a whole shadow industry that openly advertises on the internet that they will help you get your passport, your driver's license, and myriads of other functions. And trying to do business without them is more or less impossible. And because everyone now basically works around the government by using these shadow services, no one trusts the government. And so society's trust in government is eroded. And as that trust declines, so does the trust between members of society. And basically, your society falls apart. Anyway, sorry. Don't mean to sound depressing. Let's talk about what you can learn from all this. Red tape and bureaucracy, while often viewed negatively, are foundational to structured governance. They bring order and predictability, enforce fairness, and prevent corruption. But they also resist change, can be overly rigid, and tend to expand over time, leading to corruption being hidden in the ugly underbelly. In your fantasy worlds, integrating these aspects of bureaucracy can add a layer of realism and complexity to your societies, offering ample opportunities for conflict, character development, and plot progression, which we will talk about a little later in the video. But just as in our world, your characters can end up fighting the bureaucracy instead of dragons. But speaking of fantasy elements, let's discuss how to add those elements to your bureaucracy. There are 2 overarching themes to consider when integrating the fantastical into bureaucracy. The first is how the fantastical can change the ways in which a bureaucracy functions. For example, consider a magical record-keeping system like our computers, but driven by fairy dust. Imagine a grand library in a fantasy capital where no information is ever lost, thanks to a spell of eternal finding. Each book, document, or scroll is enchanted to float back to its rightful place on the library shelves, accessible at a moment's notice. Such a system ensures that historical records, legal documents, and even secret treaties are preserved and retrievable, eliminating human error and the decay of time. And this could be crucial in plots involving lost heirs, ancient treaties, or prophetic texts that characters need to find to resolve a crisis or complete a quest. On a personal side note, and on the topic of documentation, when I immigrated to Finland, I had to make the South African government find my actual original marriage certificate so I could bring my partner with me to Finland. And boy, would that spell have been handy. 3 months of visiting the Internal Affairs Office every damn week. And no, I didn't know a guy, and I couldn't find one on the internet to find a marriage certificate. It was hell. Absolute hell. Anyway, data retrieval is not the only bureaucratic function. Consider a realm where each citizen wears a small enchanted badge that changes color if they transgress the law. Such items could ensure compliance with bureaucratic regulations, from trade sanctions to curfews, automatically alerting officials to infractions and recording them for judicial review. This not only adds a layer of surveillance, but also opens narrative possibilities for rebellion against invasive governance or for manipulating the enchantments for espionage. Working against such a device could be a great storyline for either fantasy or science fiction. But of course, magic is not our only fantastic element. What about creatures or other species? In a city with congested skies, a griffin postal service could be the norm. These majestic creatures, managed by a special division within the bureaucratic system, could ensure that messages and parcels are delivered swiftly across the kingdom. Such a service could be crucial in wartime for carrying vital communications, or in peace to maintain the bonds between distant lands. Stories could delve into the challenges of managing such creatures, including the politics of breeding, training, and the intrigue among rival services. Undead might be the best clerks, infinitely patient and hard to kill. In a necromantic kingdom, I could see this being the price of citizenship. When you die, you become part of the eternal bureaucracy. So as a broad theme, consider how your fantastical elements might change the implementation and function of bureaucracy, from magic to fantasy creatures. But it's not just the implementation where fantasy has an impact. Our second broad theme of fantasy and bureaucracy is regulation of the fantastical. Just as real-world governments regulate professions and technologies, fantasy governments might need to regulate magic users. A ministry of magic, much like those seen in certain popular fantasy literatures, could oversee the licensing of wizards, the registration of magical artifacts, and the enforcement of magical laws. The bureaucratic handling of magic would be essential to prevent abuses, manage conflicts between magical and non-magical citizens, and control the use of powerful artifacts. How a government manages these aspects can be a rich vein of stories, from bureaucratic corruption and the smuggling of banned artifacts, to the struggles of the unregistered mage living under the radar of the bureaucracy. And of course, a wizard might face a yearly battle to get his carpet through the magical DMV. But also remember that laws are the basis of bureaucracy. So crafting laws for magic use, enchantment limitations, and spellcasting in public could form the basis of a bureaucratic legal system in a fantasy world. Such laws would not only govern how magic is used, but also protect citizens from reckless spellcasting. The legal proceedings in such a system would require officials who are both legally and magically educated, introducing a unique profession into the fantasy world. Legal battles in courtrooms where magical proof and arcane arguments are presented could be both fascinating and humorous. I've done a number of videos on the law and magic, and even one on the constitutional magocracy, which you can check out in the information card. But why does all this matter? Incorporating fantastical elements into your bureaucracy cements those fantastical elements in the very relatable reality of fighting red tape. It breathes life into your fantasy world and makes it feel lived in. And readers, according to the Giant Fantasy Survey, love a lived-in world. But bureaucracy offers more than just a place to cement your world building. It is also an amazing source for plots. Bureaucracy might not spark excitement at first mention, but in the hands of a skilled storyteller, it can drive complex and captivating narratives. Let's explore some of those plots together. First, Kafkaesque scenarios. Franz Kafka's The Trial is a quintessential example where bureaucracy serves as both setting and antagonist. The protagonist, Joseph K., finds himself entangled in a nightmarish legal battle with an opaque and unmanageable bureaucratic system that seems designed to obfuscate rather than clarify, reflecting the absurdities of excessive bureaucracy. In a fantasy setting, imagine a character navigating a similarly surreal ministry of magic, where obtaining a simple magical permit involves a labyrinthian process of nonsensical tests and cryptic paperwork, highlighting the absurdity and potential dark humor of bureaucratic red tape. So you can literally use the bureaucratic system itself to create tension and be your antagonist that your characters have to slay. Second, you could delve into corruption and intrigue that can take root in bureaucracies. In Terry Pratchett's Going Postal, the protagonist, Moist von Ludwig, is placed in charge of a defunct postal service in the city of Ankh-Morpork, where he must navigate and reform a corrupt and inefficient system riddled with bribery and skullduggery. This setting allows for a rich exploration of corruption within bureaucratic systems and how one can manipulate or reform such a system from within. The story, as all Sir Terry's books do, blends humor with serious commentary on the nature of society and bureaucracy. Seriously, that man did not miss with his social commentary. And this is a good place to talk about embedding social commentary in your story without sounding like a scold. Show the ridiculous and complex nature of bureaucracy rather than scolding your readers about how it should be, and you can offer great commentary on the way the world can be better. Anyway, the third use of bureaucracy is as a quest item, where the characters need to solve a puzzle or find a critical plot element. For example, in Robert Jackson Bennett's City of Stairs, characters must delve into historical records and ancient bureaucracies to solve mysteries that could change the fate of their world. These quests for crucial documents and the unraveling of bureaucratic puzzles drive the narrative, demonstrating how bureaucracy can be woven into the very fabric of plot, leading to major revelations and character development. So the bureaucracy doesn't have to be an antagonist, it can be an obstacle on the journey. Bureaucracy, with its maze-like structures and often infuriating processes, provides a rich vein of material for fantasy writers. It can be a source of conflict, a comedic element, or a puzzle for characters to solve, all while offering commentary on the nature of power and governance. By embedding bureaucratic challenges in your story, you can mirror real-world frustrations, making fantastical worlds more relatable and deeply textured. What is the best use of bureaucracy you've seen in fantasy? Let me know in the comments. And finally, let's close out with 5 tips to create your bureaucracy. 1. Decide the scale of bureaucracy in your world. Is it omnipresent or minimalistic? Also bear in mind the size of your country. A vast empire has a larger bureaucracy than a small kingdom. 2. How does the bureaucracy regulate the fantastical elements of your world? And closely associated, 3. How do the fantastical elements of your world change the way the bureaucracy functions? 4. Develop a few key departments or offices that are particularly relevant to your story setting. Don't try to detail the whole thing. Focus on what you really need for your story. And 5. Consider the effects of bureaucracy on the daily life and social structure of your cultures. And of course, remember those 5 key components of a bureaucracy that we discussed earlier. And those are my thoughts on bureaucracy and fantasy. If you want immediate access to the rest of this series on political fantasy, you can get early access for the price of a cup of coffee, along with these cool perks when you join the channel. You might even get your name shouted out like Tiffany, Dylan, Katie and Tony, long-standing members of the channel who I deeply appreciate, and all the other members who are scrolling up in the credits. However, please don't feel pressure to support the channel financially. You can also show your support just by watching another video. Since you enjoyed this video, maybe check out my video on how to prosecute criminals in a fantasy world. Or you could trust the algorithm's recommendation right over there. And I will see you soon for another episode from Just in Time Worlds, where we build what we need when we need it.